this morning. Good. So the topic of this morning's Dharma talk is resurrecting thoughts. Resurrecting thoughts. So thoughts appear. We all have them, have you noticed? We all have them in common. We all have thoughts. We just take it for granted. We have thoughts. We think, but we have no idea what they are. You can't actually find a thought and present it to someone. You can tell someone what you're thinking, but you can't think something that somebody can actually see what you're thinking. At least I don't think so. So, did that work? Yeah, that worked. It's a difficult topic to talk about because it's, for one thing, it's so right in our face. I mean, we have conversations about, well, what were you thinking of? What have you been thinking about what he said, about what she said? And so it's an everyday thing. We sit over a cup of coffee or and talk about, well, what I think. Well, what do you think? Well, I think, and on and we elaborate on it. So we're so used to having that particular dynamic as human beings that we can communicate with, have a community, interact with others, communicate our ideas, our feelings, our thoughts, our memories, our judgments, our opinions, on and on and on. And sometimes we suspect that some animals have pretty high thinking process going on. Quite a number of dogs, if you were to hook human vocal cords up to them so they could actually speak, would they say, hey, by the way, I don't like that food you're buying me. Switch back to that other stuff. I tried to tell you. Roof, roof, roof. If you have a pet, then you know that that's probably going on some level. They're trying to tell you something when they meow. And they're kind of perplexed that you don't get it. So talking about resurrecting thoughts, this can be a problem. The first thought that arises, let it arise. I sometimes say when people are sitting, don't kill your thoughts. This is a vow that we observe in this lineage is don't take life. Don't take anything's life away from it. And that's an observation. That's not a commandment. We don't have commandments. Would you mind moving out so that because when I can't see someone's face, it's very distracting for me. And life is distracting enough in itself. Thank you, sir. So I sometimes, when I talk about sitting meditation, I say sit, and if you want to know what no-taking life is, let's start with your own mind. Because sometimes we tend to murder our thoughts. We tend to go in and, I don't want that. I don't know if maybe murder wouldn't be the appropriate word for it, but we're at war with ourselves. That's what this is about. Sometimes we just worry, we fret. We complain to ourselves, we complain to our friends, we complain to our therapist. We're at war. So the other thing that we do is the title of this, which the title of this particular talk is about, basically, and I can take this any direction with questions if you have them, is we resurrect thoughts. In other words, thoughts are going down of themselves. They come up, we think a little bit, and then it starts to go away. And because there's something about the nature of that thought that supports a self, supports an identity, supports what is commonly called an ego, or that self-centered part of us that just thinks about me and my stuff. Or me and the nearest extension of me is like my property, my children, my family, my community, which could be extensive and might be 8 people, 3 people. Just an extension of self-centeredness. So resurrecting thoughts, what I'm referring to there is the thoughts are, we're watching the thoughts come, and then sometimes we go back, and sometimes out of fear or desperation, sometimes out of insecurity, any kind of negative feelings or emotions, we come back and we rethink that. We go back over old things over and over. We keep worrying ourselves. We keep going over and over it. We need some kind of resolution about it. So we keep bringing it back to life, pumping pumping fuel into that. And the fuel is generally could be referred to as fear. As fear that something's going to get lost, something's going to go by that isn't understood, something is going to go by that somehow is reflects badly on us or makes us look not so good to other people. And sometimes it's even deeper. Sometimes the emotion or the feeling is even deeper than that. Sometimes it's so deep that we have the feeling, we have the emotion. It's like a thought, but it's so has so much texture to it, so many whatever. You could use visual images. You could say so many feathers. You could say so many needles. But some kind of a feeling situation is very deep that we can't actually express. But somehow we want to bring that back. We want to resurrect that idea, pump life back into it so that we can fool around with it, go around in circles, give us something to do. It's almost like a Rubik's Cube, if you know what those are. So what I'm saying about this is what I say about just about everything is, what should we do? And we all want something to do. Well, if you're here for the next 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm telling you, awareness around the thought patterns, don't try to get rid of them, don't try to resurrect them, don't try to bring them back or rehash ideas, rethink, analyze. A little bit's good. A natural analysis of sometimes we naturally need to look at something and analyze it and weigh alternatives, so a little bit of that works. But what happens, well, you know what happens. We overdo it. We think too much. We worry too much. And the next thing you know, this is what our gut feels like, and we don't know what to do about it. And then in our society, we only have a few options. You may be able to have a situation like this where what is being taught is work with your mind, your basic mind as it is, body, speech, mind, body, mind, spirit. Any one of those things that commonly are thought of as a trinity. If you can somehow work with that fundamentally, or you just I'm not trying to get rid of medications or medicines. I'm not trying to get rid of anything. I'm just saying that you should be in charge of that. You should decide. I'm not going to decide anything. Any of you that know me and talk to me, you'll see that I support your intelligence. I don't just give you a bunch of things to believe in or think about or to obey. On the other hand, some people, very close students of mine, come to me and they want my input, and so I have permission to go further, and I may say more. Like we have a very close student of mine who is she's upstairs. She's a fully ordained monk, and she's in her last day of a 10-day, or actually it's 9-day solitary retreat. That means she's up there sitting 8 hours a day, every day, alone. She can't hear me because there's 18 inches of air between the ceiling and the floor. Although she might have her ear to the floor. No, she's having lunch right now. And so she's on a schedule. She's actually, it's an agreement. We've agreed to do this. Nobody made her do this. I didn't send her up there. She came and we talked about this, and she went into retreat. I think this is her 4th solitary retreat. One of them was 3 weeks long. And several people here have done solitary work. And it just means that it's a way of working with the mind where you can see the way you keep resurrecting things, the way something is ready to die out, it's ready to go away, but there's something threatening about letting certain things go and something threatening about taking other things on. We get threatened by that because it doesn't support our idea of who we are, what we're about, what are our thoughts, emotions, feelings, and so on. And I'll say something that you've heard me say over and over, and I'll say it again. Sometimes I would just like to sit here for 45 minutes and repeat the next phrase. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. It's an incredible situation to be in. Very difficult to just think your way into not taking a position. It's just being objective. You could say it's even being scientific. without the imputed coldness about that, no emotion. I'm not saying don't be emotional. I'm saying don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. If you do nothing with it, then the proper amount or the kind of energy that arises as emotion is completely allowed to come in. We don't shut down on the feeling end of the situation. So don't believe it, don't make assumptions that something is true, and don't disbelieve it. Like if it's like a tabletop, just don't have to believe a tabletop for it to be there. It's a tabletop, it's just there. If somebody takes it away, you don't necessarily have to believe somebody stole it. I think somebody stole that. Or somebody has waved a magic wand over that and made it invisible. Isn't that funny? That's not funny. Yes, Lisa.
If we see ourselves doing that, resurrecting these
Yes.
ideas and hashing them out again, what do we do with that?
Do nothing with it, but the observation of something. This is something that is missed in most of the teachings, almost all over the place, other than in certain spiritual paths. I'm not saying it's not covered other places. It probably is. But it's just observe. Just observe, and that's very difficult. If you're feeling threatened, or you feel like you're losing, or you're having emotions that feel like a cat is crawling up the inside of your rib cage. So I wouldn't be able to use that image if I hadn't had feelings like that. And I really like cats too. So if you had a feeling like that, it's difficult to just observe the feeling. Observe that this hurts, that hurts, this hurts, that hurts. Even saying it hurts is a little bit too much. Because feeling, if looked at closely, is the same. Pain and pleasure are not separate. You have to see it. I can't talk you into it. I don't intend to talk you into it. I wouldn't take your intelligence away from you by telling you what you should believe. I bet I say often, don't believe a thing I'm saying. Walk out of here and disregard the whole thing if you can. Forget it. Go somewhere else. Do something else. Live your life. Be happy. You could say, well, I'm not going to do what he says. I'm not going to be happy. Hell with him. But I'm saying I'm really as sincere as I can be to say that you should live your life. You should respect. I'll use some fancy words here. You should respect your karma, the causes and conditions that are arising in your life that manifest as feelings, emotions, thoughts. Don't kill them, and don't resurrect them. Do nothing with them but observe. And in this way, you will find your what's called natural hierarchy that was taught by my teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Natural hierarchy. You'll find your actual place in the world is exactly where you need to be. There's not going to be any envy about somebody else's position. There's not going to be any regret about what you're doing. You'll feel just exactly what you may not feel comfortable necessarily. That may be your time of the year to sit on a bed of nails. Very difficult. I have students who are having a lot of difficulty, and it's hard for me to tell them to meditate. Just don't go to war with your feelings. Just be with what's happening. It's very difficult to see someone who is really, really suffering, having a difficult time, and not try to think of some kind of what can I do, what can I do? And if somebody comes to me and says, well, I'm taking Wellbutrin, should I be taking that? I'll say, that's up to you. I'm not going to make a decision about your drugs. I would say, if you can, take a vacation from them. If you can. And if you can't, then don't do it. And do what you need to do. There's so much out there, and it's so complicated. I mean, just the drug situation is so incredibly complicated, with drugs that make you feel good, the drugs that tamp you down, drugs that fluff you up, and it's just, and some people are taking the drugs that are at war with each other. Shoka.
How are pain and pleasure the same?
Well, to do it conceptually, they're the same in that there's the same nerve endings on your hand. If I run a feather over my hand, and if I run a nail over my hand, it's the same nerve ending. It's just one is being distressed, and the other one is being teased. I don't have to explain this to you guys. Same thing with some food tastes really sweet and some food tastes really sour. We don't want it too, a little bit sour is interesting because it's like entertainment. And a little bit sweet is good, but too sweet is too sweet and too sour is too sour. But it's the same nerve, and it's the same thing in the mind. Your basic sense in the mind is happening. It's a receiver. We all spend a lot of time, like I'm spending a lot of time right now, running my mouth. Yak, yak, yak. I'm talking. I'm saying stuff. But I'm saying stuff based on have 45 minutes to an hour here where I'm talking. Most of the time, I'm not doing much at all. And I just spent the last 40 plus years looking at my mind and helping other people with their minds. So I spent a lot of time not doing anything at all other than just trying to receive, trying to really see what is it that comes up and what is it that goes away. And what is it that doesn't do anything? What is can you actually see the observer? Can an eyeball see itself without a mirror? Can you actually see yourself? Look, this is what this sitting practice is about. It's all about mistaken identity. Who you are is very, very difficult to find without some kind of a spiritual path, some kind of a, for human beings anyway. And we aren't the only ones around. There's lots and lots of layers that are. So I was saying, don't believe anything, don't disbelieve anything. If you do that, then you're in what is called in Buddhism the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose. Buddhism, even though it's been around for 2,500 years, is not a belief system. There are things that look like beliefs, reincarnation, but I don't believe that. I don't believe it, nor do I disbelieve it. So, yes.
A question from Sandro out in New York City.
I know him.
He asks, isn't the idea that I'd resurrect a thought reifying the idea that there's something here that persists?
Okay. But it's not a problem of reifying anything. It's you notice that in a nutshell, or in a bigger shell. If you want to find a bigger shell than that, he's aware. Sandru, you're aware that you're reifying. That your awareness is awareness. Awareness is the most important thing. It's like the sky is the most important thing, not the clouds. Now, obviously, they work together, called cooperation. So it's fine for clouds and sky, but that's kind of an obvious example. But your mind is like that. What we do is we tend to get hooked up on the thoughts or the emotions of the clouds and try to wrestle with them. The image only goes so far, of course, and we miss the actual identity, which is closer to what the sky is. Who you actually are isn't doing much of anything at all. It's like it has been in the Tibetan tradition, it's called unborn, unceasing, unborn. It doesn't come into existence. If it doesn't come into existence, it can't pass away. Put that in your logic machine. If it doesn't come into existence, then it can't pass away. Unborn, and then unceasing. It can't cease. And it has a nature like the sky. That's who you actually are. If you find out who you are, there might be clouds, there might not be. You're not going to mind one way or another. The sky is completely left unmarked by the most horrible tsunami or hurricane. Nothing can distress the sky. Mind like water. This water just goes wherever it needs to go. Yes.
A question from Kevin Townley out in Brooklyn, New York.
Kevin.
He's in New York, actually. He asks, as an artist, I can see the impulse to resurrect intense thoughts/feelings as though they fuel creativity. Is this problematic or ill-advised?
No.
Sometimes creativity seems like an attempt to make something useful out of a shitty situation.
But see that, Kevin, that's still awareness. I mean, it's still, I hear, because you're asking the question, because you have some curiosity about what's going on, and there's a sense of openness, or Kevin wouldn't even be asking the question. So as long as there's awareness there, you're actually free to move around this way or move that way. So You need grist for the mill, so to speak, if you're going to be creative, if you're going to operate in that area. One of the reasons it seems that people go into visual arts, creative arts, acting, writing, because they feel they suspect and they sense something really profound about the nature of being a human being. It's not just shoveling shit your whole life, although that might be fine. But you might want to do something extraordinary, unusual, or creative, whatever you want to say about it, and that's valid, and it's valid for someone to do that. So I'm not here to tamp everyone down and say, don't do anything but look at a wall all day long. I would think if you're going to be a creative person and work in that area, it would be good to look very closely at what your motivations are. Are your motivations to make something so that everybody will admire you? Is your motivation just about looking at what you're making, just about, you could say, perfecting your skill, perfecting your ability, perfecting your expression? Even that can be tinged with self-centeredness and vanity. But if it's seen, if you see it, if the awareness is there, it doesn't matter, because ego is not real. You don't have to get rid of something that is unreal. But if you see that it's unreal, then you don't have to, then your ego is, you're no longer bothered by your ego. Someone else might think that you're vain and egotistical. And you're not concerned with what they think either. Not that you're dismissive of what other people think, but you're also not so much affected by what other people think that you're modifying your own activities so that other people, who might be crazier than you are unhappy with you. Have you ever noticed how somebody that even somebody that you don't particularly agree with what they're doing, if they're unhappy with what you're doing, suddenly you become very sensitive about that. You want people who are actually not real smart. Could I say it that way? Yeah, you're sensitive to their opinions. Yeah, that's painful. To be worried about people that actually wouldn't even appreciate how wonderful you are if they could see it. Yes, Jesse.
How do you become more tolerant of cats inside your rib cage?
So the way you would become more tolerant, to use your words, of cats inside your rib cage, in other words, prioritize the awareness of it rather than the war with it, trying to get rid of it, trying to justify. The subtle way of getting rid of it is blaming someone else, excusing, pointing the finger. And the difficulty with this is sometimes you can actually find a cause for that, but if you operate in that way, it becomes circular, and then you spend your whole life at war with cause and effect, So it's not that something didn't cause that, but if you work at it with awareness, then you're actually working with the entire situation, because your awareness is ready. The awareness can go from here to the Andromeda galaxy, or it can go to the center of the earth. You can't, there's no walls. It's like it says in the sutra we chanted this morning, without walls of the mind. When there's no walls of the mind, not having any walls of the mind actually allows you to see that scratching for what it actually is. It's just sensation, really intense sensation. Don't do anything with it. Don't enhance the thoughts around it or the suffering around it by belaboring the whole thing. Just observe, just like observing. That's why we train by observing the wall, so that we can see clearly what is happening. So when that situation does come up that is very difficult, we can observe it rather than fight with it, or rather than blame someone for it. Go to war. This is a war you can't win, this one, down in your gut. More.
Well, so is prioritizing awareness something that you can actually do with your will?
You can't will.
It's a practice.
Awareness is already the case. Very good question. Awareness is already the case. Awareness doesn't belong to anyone. So it might feel like it. It might feel, aren't I the one who's aware of a beach patrol sweatshirt in Carlsbad, California? Isn't it? Aren't I the one who's? Not exactly. Not exactly. So you can't actually will to that. I mean, you have a little bit of say so. That's why the Buddhism is called the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. Just observe. The one thing you want to know what you can do. The one thing you can actually do is observe. You can look and you can see what something is, and if you observe without adding on thoughts to it, adding on opinions to it, adding on in order to cover it up. And covering things up can be in the form of excuses, opinions, ideas, blaming yourself, blaming others, thinking, analyzing, around and around, and just resurrecting all the thoughts. It's like pretty soon you have a whole room full of thoughts, and they're all clamoring at you. And what happens is that clawing of your rib cage gets covered up by all of that activity somewhat. So that's why we tend to go into that. Or we can do it the other way. We can get someone to prescribe drugs, and we can take and find drugs that will cover up the so-called nerve endings that are experiencing that cat clawing. Probably not a good idea. Temporary fix, as they say. Yes.
Question from Sandru and Sheldon, and then we'll have to consider.
Yes.
From Sandru, 2 questions actually. The first one is coconut shell.
Yes, that would work. Inside a coconut shell instead of a nutshell. Thank you.
And
I
then
knew there was a bigger one. Yes.
his next question, isn't the resurrected thought a completely new thought? Aren't I deluded when I think that's what I was thinking before?
Yeah, everything is always new. You can't repeat anything. I forgot to say that part. It's the action. It's the action of doing that, of constantly trying to crank something up with the intention of supporting some kind of agenda about who we are and what we're doing and how we're succeeding, how we're not losing. So that's the area where it becomes blurry. I mean, even if we went into actual past lives, from which is not to be believed or disbelieved, you're much better off to not take any position on anything. Just say I don't. It's fine to say I don't know. If it's 75 years old, after doing this for close to half a century, I can say I don't know. Because I don't. But I don't look away from it as if, well, I don't know about that. I'm not going to look at that. Always investigate everything. If you have opinions and ideas, they will get in the way of your investigation. This doesn't mean that you don't have to have an opinion about a table. A table is hard, if I went like this and it suddenly turned into gelatin, I would think somebody's trying to trick me. I mean, it could happen, yes.
Sheldon's question, what happens when you find out who you are?
Well, you stop going to war with everything. It doesn't mean you don't have intense negative feelings or positive feelings or anything, but you just are no longer up for no more locking and loading. No more warfare with anything. And this also doesn't mean you're some kind of a wimp, that somebody can take advantage of and can just beat up on. You're just some kind of a limp piece of chamois cloth. And you might even be more apt to step into a situation where there was all kinds of warfare, because you would be the one person with no weapons, even though you would be there. Because if you step into any kind of warfare and there's any warfare in you, this is why I often say, with all these causes and everything, where people want to go and march, I'd say, please go ahead, but take a lot of awareness with you. Pack a couple of bags of awareness. You don't need anything else to go in that situation. So that you actually are aware of so you can see that a lot of people are in those situations because they're so intensely at war with themselves, and they can project. It's easier to project that war out on the world rather than make peace here. This is a difficult one. This is most of what people I talk to are doing this on some level or another. So good luck. So we're going to have a daily Dharma gathering talk. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. So if you can stay, please come and help me. We done?
Yes, we'll go ahead and
Okay.
dedicate the merit.
Very good.
back of your blue chant books is our dedication of merit. Also, we have a donation box out in the hallway. And year-end giving, if you can help us, please do. It is, we are a tax deductible or exempt organization.
May awareness penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho-san, shi-shi-hu, shi-son bu-sa, mo-ko-sa, mo-ko-ja-ho-ro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.